Welcome to Podaria. Today's guests are Drew Alexander Ford and Trevor Bumgarner. They're professional Juilliard trained musicians and the co hosts and creators of the Faking Notes podcast, a podcast for artist entrepreneurs. Drew, also known as That Viola Kid, has been spotlighted by many outlets such as Thrillist, WNYC, the Detroit Free Press, and Strings Magazine, and has been named one of the titans of classical music Instagram by National Sawdust Log. Trevor Bumgarner is a composer and has worked on and written for New York City Ballet's Choreographic Institute, several off-Broadway shows, and films that have screened at festivals ranging from Guam to Tribeca to Netflix. Both Drew and Trevor also interview rising artists through their Faking Notes podcast in hopes to help and support the community of entrepreneurial artists around the world thrive. This is an incredible conversation, and I appreciate you watching and listening to Podaria. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow Podaria on your preferred platforms. So, without further ado, this is Drew Alexander Ford and Trevor Bumgarner. So, Drew and Trevor, do you guys just want to quickly introduce yourselves?
Me first, Trevor. Can I go
Take it away.
first? Hi, my name is Drew Alexander Ford. I'm from Peachtree City, Georgia. I'm known as That Viola Kid on the internet. Uh, I like to describe myself as an artist entrepreneur, content creator, and professional violist who tells stories on the internet and hopefully in real life one day post COVID about what it's like to pursue an art, why it's important to your development as a human, and how it could be a vehicle for you to continually and perpetually fall in love with yourself.
And I'm Trevor. I'm the other half of the Faking Notes podcast, and I'm a composer, an instrumentalist, and so I work in a bunch of different types of music: film, dance, classical, pop, you name it. And over the course of my career, it's been kind of like a fun wandering path, and I've just realized that I just really like working with people. I like collaborating. I really like thinking about music, the business side of music, almost more so than sitting in the practice room myself. But that's led me, of course, to Drew. And since we've started our podcast, interviewing more people, but it all kind of boils down to conversations and service. And so a lot of what I've been doing now on the entrepreneur side of things has been trying to help out my musician colleagues and just to continue to explore, continue in the journey, and who knows what will be in the next couple of years. But we're both happy to be here uh, to speak to the younger and all generations, and just try to give everyone a little bit of a leg up and like let them know what we're thinking about, what we know, what we think we might know, and continue this journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you guys could join me today for this episode. Just diving right in, what was like the thing that got you guys into playing or composing music? Where was that like start?
You want to take it away, Drew?
I'm giving you the floor, bro. You did the intro. Like, see, I forgot to say that I was
Straight
one
up.
half of Faking Those podcast in my intro, man.
Now it's
So
official.
so now it's official. We are two parts of a whole, and I want to hear your answer, bro.
So yeah, nothing before having a podcast with Drew actually matters in my story. That's really where there's two phases of my life, and like that's the phase we'll focus on. But no, so my journey, it's kind of just through curiosity. So some people in my family played music, not really professionally. I didn't even know that growing up until I was in music for college that my grandma had gotten a music degree. She stopped like right after undergrad, rebelled against my great grandma and had kids and kind of like left it behind. And so I've had smatterings of arts careers in my family, but I wasn't even aware of them. And so I was this odd child in rural North Carolina who just happened to have a knack for music, and I really would say it was a talent for it because I didn't practice, nor did I know what I was doing. I was your typical did okay for not practicing, but couldn't really it couldn't really extend beyond that. That can only go so far. So I tried a bunch of different types of music growing up. I started off with the clarinet because some of my friends played in a band, and music was a big part of like the church I grew up in. And then, of course, I was because I played the clarinet, I was tired of being made fun of. So in middle school, it was electric guitar. I heard Eddie Van Halen, it was electric guitar time. And somehow I wound up on the bassoon, the coolest of all instruments, mind you. And it was the one instrument I could not figure out. It baffled me. I couldn't pick it up and make it sound good. It was a science experiment. It was horrible, but there was just something about music. Like I never really put in too much thought into it as a career, and because it was kind of an outlier situation, my parents also didn't put too much thought in it. They're like, yeah, he's doing well in music. He likes it. He takes all these music classes. Sure, why not? Meanwhile, I didn't really have any formal lessons except on guitar for just a year. And I really was terrible at the bassoon. That is not an underestimation. So I went into a lesson with my then bassoon teacher all throughout undergrad. And I think he realized that, oh, he just doesn't know what he's doing. Like that's the problem. He just doesn't have a model. So he accepted me. I became kind of his pet project. And in undergrad, I mean, I switched from education to performance, even though I knew I'd be teaching for the rest of my life. I just really wanted to focus and dig in. And I had played all these different types of music growing up. I played in musicals, I played in rock bands, metal bands, bassoon, clarinet, and you just can't really practice them all. As everyone who's in music school will find out, you kind of have to choose one. And I really missed my connection to all these other types of music. I missed my connection to all these other types of instruments. So that's what led me to composition. I remember walking into my very first lesson in undergrad with my bassoon teacher, and I asked him, I'm like, so how do I become a better performer? And he said, easy, become a composer. You have to think about things in a particular way. Fast forward 4 years later, I'm a double major in both bassoon performance and composition. I go into my very last lesson with my composition teacher, and you can see where this is going. I ask him, so how do I become a better composer? He's like, oh, easy, become a better performer. And so that was my experience. It led me into Juilliard, where I focused primarily on composition, really getting that strict kind of classical music foundation. And since leaving that and graduating, I kind of re-branched out. I reconnected with all these other types of music, all these other types of instruments in my composition, going into film, writing musicals, pop. That was my moment to learn everything I learned in that very traditional classical music sphere, and then spread the wings and bring some of that knowledge in collaboration with other people. And my next collaboration has been, for instance, a podcast with Drew. I realized over the course of all of this, the thing I love more than anything is talking about music, thinking about music, learning about the other sides of music and other people's stories. For some reason, I really love people. And I really love helping them. That's just what really brings me joy. And so, for the better part of beyond just teaching music and my experience in teaching music, I've kind of discovered now as I approach 30 and approach that next phase of the career that that's what I want my focus to be on, is to help fellow artists, help fellow citizens, and really just follow the interest, whether it's music or not, and just take the next step in the artist journey.
That's awesome.
Speaking of next steps, Drew,
Man, dude, like that was a bar and a half, bro. Like you were
there's a
spitting,
lot.
bro. I learned a lot. I did not know that your grandmother was a had studied
Well, I
and
didn't either. It was a small college, Salem College, North Carolina, and
word.
she really did quit and she rebelled. She was told like, "Don't marry this man," and she married him. Plot twist. And she stopped music, so she might have had a career in music, and no one told me about this. No one told me about this. I'm in the middle of college and she's like, "Oh, I found my old theory assignment. I got an A." And I was like, "Oh, great." She's since passed, but was just the
Yeah,
sweetest lady. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so proud." And so,
yeah.
um, when I'm in the middle of college, she brings me to one of the wind ensemble concerts. She brings me that assignment that she got an A on.
Uh-huh.
And it had parallel fifths. I'd have given her a B minus.
Ah.
Sorry, Grandma, I love you. But no. So I've been around music, but I think, and to end my journey and talk about Drew's, one of the benefits is that I think, well, there's a lot of disadvantages to like having not studied and having not put in a lot of grunt work early on. I think the reason I stayed around is because of the curiosities. I didn't have a necessarily a set path. I kind of wandered. My parents never forced me to do anything with music. They didn't really know, oh, we should take this kid to private lessons or we should send him to this summer camp. So I was never really pressured. Of course, downsides to some of that, I probably needed a lot of pressure to get a little head start. But it's what kept it exciting is that I got to kind of forge the path on my own.
It's so funny. Your story is so beautiful, Trevor, and the one that's one of the things I love most about you as I've spent time, becoming really close to you and witnessing you in your genius zone. You are an amalgamation of many different expertises, and you bounce around, and you're driven by your passion and your love, and I love being surrounded by people who do that. And so, like, for the young people listening, like, that is like really the key. Like, you need to follow your passion, you need to follow your fun, and whatever that may be, it will take you to a truer expression of who you are. And that's where money happens to go. That's where opportunities happen to blossom. But oftentimes we're too busy inhibiting ourselves and being afraid of ourselves and not having the conversation with ourselves to be able to identify that passion. So try a lot of stuff. That's what I like to tell a lot of kiddos, just like Trevor. And then you too may one day have a podcast. you
The peak of career success.
know what I'm saying? So with that said, my journey was completely different from Trevor's in many ways, because I started my viola when I was 12 years old in middle school, and I'm the product of happenstance, fortune, and positive environments. My mom was very, very supportive of everything that I wanted to do. She could tell, like, she used to always say, I can tell when there's like a fire that's like lit inside of you. I just need to just, go get some wood. Let's just figure this out. And so for me, that firewood was the viola. If I don't know if you know about viola jokes, but we are often, the punchline is often, just use the viola for
Of
firewood.
course, for
You
everything.
know,
For everything.
that's
Yeah.
so. But I like to think it that would be making fire. You know what I'm saying? You rub those strings
Oh.
the right
reclaim,
way.
reclaim viola
Gotta
burning. So
reclaim the firewood, man. Yo, that could be a really good hashtag. Firewood. Anyway, uh, I started in sixth grade when I was 12 years old by under a teacher named Amanda Moran, and she really took me under her wing. I was quickly bored and quickly uh, on a different level than the other beginners, mostly because I just like went home and practiced. Like most of my friends that, when they had playing tests, they didn't go and practice, but I knew, first of all, I liked doing this, number one, and number two, and this is really embarrassing to admit, but I would often get kicked out of class because I couldn't stop laughing when people would play their lines. Because if you listen to beginning strings, that stuff sounds like animals in distress.
Yeah.
And when you know how it's supposed to sound because the good people played it, and you hear it juxtaposed towards the people who didn't look at it, it's just comedy gold. So I was often excused from class. But my driving factor was always like when it was time for me to do the playing test, I needed to crush everybody. That was my performance thing. That was my statement to the world. That was like the first iteration of me making an Instagram video. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's attention's on me. And so from that pressure, I really put it upon myself that I would try to be the best violist in the beginner class. And that kept snowballing, and that desire to become the best violist in school then manifested. And then I got introduced to in eighth grade, like the best violist in the state at all state, and I was like, oh wait, hold on, I'm not even a minnow in the ocean. We need to work. So it was always seeking. One of my mentors said many years ago, but it's so right. If you are the best person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so I always operated from that perspective of like, okay, am I the best player here? Ugh, okay, I need to go somewhere else because this is not where I need to be.
Mhm.
And in doing that, I began being surrounded by more and more sweaty classical musicians, like people who did grow up, had the instrument in their hands since they were 4 years old, had the teacher from the symphony for 6, 7 years, as long as I'd been playing. They'd had private instruction and figure out, okay, this is what we need to do to be a successful classical musician. Now, that's kind of, in my humble opinion, that's kind of an oxymoron. You know, successful classical musician just because of the nature of the way the industry is changing. That being said, I am similar to Trevor in that I had grown up listening to rock, funk, hip hop, soul, country, jazz, so many different genres. When I was in seventh grade, I was the lead in the Fiddler on the Roof production in middle school.
I played in the pit on some of
Play
those.
in the pit. You played in the pit. I was Tevia, bro. I did this. I did
You were
the shimmy
Tevye?
and every. I was
What?
Tevia, bro. I
What?
was Tevia. I did three
That's a huge
shows.
role.
Wow.
What,
That's a huge role, man. That's a
bro?
lot of lines.
It was my first
Woo.
ever theater, and I learned all the lines, I learned all the songs. I didn't even know how to sing, but I went into what I think is
Incredible.
my genius zone of just like trying to tell stories. And I think that was my first real introduction to like performance, like really selling a role, understanding one's place in it, connecting with other artists to create a patchwork of communication that becomes the show. And I applied that and continue to apply that as a violist, understanding that unlike Tevia, I'm like I'm like not important. Like I'm the dude playing the third. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's always playing. Drew, can you play can you play quieter? Okay. You know you're just playing whole notes, right? You don't need to play fortissimo. That's me. So to end this long diatribe, I just wanted to say like as I went down the classical track, I did everything I was supposed to because my whole when I was in high school and even not even sure I was going to pursue music, what I wanted to do was be a YouTuber. What I wanted to do was travel the world playing video game music and playing chamber music and doing whatever I wanted to do. But I unfortunately listened to people who knew better, elders who knew exactly what I needed to do. And for the listeners, I'm doing air quotes. Um, and then I went on the traditional path. I picked up $80,000 in student loans. And while I am very thankful for my ability to play and all the training I have, it did not prepare me for how to be uh, useful to the music industry at large, not just the classical music industry. And I think that's a huge distinction that we don't talk about in the culture because if the classical music is industry is not hiring you, how do you make money? How do you support yourself? How do you put food on your kids' table, right? And so I've been kind of confronting that during the pandemic. And I just want to say, like, I'm thankful for my love of other genres because that has helped me, much like Trevor, find ways to be useful to people beyond just the concert stage. And I'm currently building out my business to continue to be even more so today.
That's amazing. I actually like, I feel like my story is almost identical to yours, Drew, because in the sense that, I mean, Fairfax, Virginia, if you think about it, it's full of the most hardworking, at least people, educators, if you think about it. But at the same time, there's a lot of competition here in Northern Virginia, and it's absolutely insane because I like the moment that I thought I was good, I noticed that the kid next to me has been playing since he was 4, and he's probably going to go on to become the next Beethoven or Bach or who knows who. But I think again, similar to you, the competition is what drives the success in a sense, and that having the people that are a lot better around you is exactly what's going to make you better because you're not going to learn from someone that's not better than you. That's not how learning works. You learn from teachers who are experienced or more educated than you, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I find it fascinating that both of you guys have different stories, different journeys, but we're all in the same place now. We're all on this one Zoom call right now, or on the podcast right now, and we're all here. So
You're with two master's degree students and you haven't even finished high school. So
I'm
you're
Shout
close.
out to you.
We're
But
on track.
But what you've done already is like super impressive. Like I couldn't have imagined like reaching out or starting a podcast or doing anything. I was I was very busy in high school, but I was also very lazy at the same time. So like the fact that you're already so looking is like a testament to what you've done and your environment. And I just wanted to put a little bow on for both Drew and I's stories, and actually a lot of our friends and colleagues is just what you said. While some journeys might lend itself to like maybe a higher percentage success chance within classical music, there are so many people of different backgrounds and different paths who have brought them to where they are today in the music field, and particularly both for Drew and I, like our time in Los Angeles. Uh, some of those people, driving trucks, Christmas tree farms, like no music school, whatever, folk musicians, rappers,
going to
whatever.
Berkeley, dropping out, and then becoming a producer and just making your own beats that people now spend money all around the world
Yeah.
paying for. You know,
And it's absolutely like incredible, like just how many people can wind up there. And a lot of it's grinding, putting in the hours, but not even just that because there's no guarantee you can work hard and have it not pay out. But a big thing we've like noticed of who's finding success and who's happy about their success is the people that they surround themselves with. And I've noticed that my creative output, just the quality of it, let alone success from like a business side of things, is directly tied to who I'm surrounding myself with at that time, whom I'm working with, and what types of projects. Do these projects inspire me? Are they for social good? Are they for change? What do they do? And the times when I've been more upset or like not accomplishing things is often when I've had a lapse in that particular mindset. When I forget that it's not about me and it's about helping others or just surrounding myself with interesting people, that's when I'm like less creative, regardless of time, regardless of what project I'm working on. It's a big key factor. And to put a bow on for both Drew and I's stories, one thing um, that I just want to give a particular shout out to is support systems. Like Drew has an all-star mother. I have wonderful parents, and when I said like they don't, they didn't know what to do with me, like that's the proper correct assessment. But the thing they did know to do was it was never discouraging. Like my father, hardworking, working class, middle class, North Carolina, maintenance man. Like he fixed things, he builds things, and I've taken that into the digital sphere and the music sphere. But not once did he ever like question like, why are you playing in this musical? Why shouldn't you go play football? Never once. They were always there. And even beyond that, they became, I'd say, even more supportive, like when it really mattered, like college, having to figure out money with that, showing up to college concerts. And so normally, put in the work, drive your kids to these things as they're going through primary school. And then college, okay, it's your career, go ahead and do this. They really, I'd say, not just like stepped up to the plate, but really became a prominent part of my early arts career when I was older, when I was finally like figuring it out. And like that's a lot of testament to them. My sister, she was very interested in the arts. Basically, all my generation of my family, I got a lot of cousins, a lot of arts, fashion design, cooking, breweries, a lot of like making things in a creative way. And so it's there in the family, and then them taking my sister through this process with chorus and theater, and then later she got a theater degree. So I was surrounded by it, but the best part was is that it was still kind of loose. It was just, oh, he does this. It's not he has to do this. Let's go out and run him through the grinder. But to everyone out there, find that support system. And if you don't have that from family, make your own support system. Friends, colleagues, teachers, like form it because you're going to need it. You're going to need it for the rest of your life. And if it's not baked in the family, um, put a lot of energy into finding that elsewhere.
And that's the wonders of the internet. Like now you can pick your mentors. Like I think one thing that I'm really starting to understand is like the way I view reality and the way I view myself is often reflected by the types of information that I bring in and the types of content that I follow and I ingest. And so if you're always ingesting negativity, if the people around you are always negative, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to fight that and have positivity. And so I always tell kids, okay, I first audit like who are you following? Like who do you want to be like, right? Because sometimes who we try to emulate, they're either not exactly who we want to be in the future, or in some ways we already know that we're kind of being less than we're falling short of our human potential because of the things that we follow and the things that we consume. So I think that, if you follow people that you really want to be like, that are really inspiring, and that really at the end of the day, like what Trevor says, they are service oriented and they do their best to help you become the best version of you. Those are people that you want to surround yourself with. And I think that isn't really discussed enough.
Yeah, and I think especially in the music field, I've noticed that there's a lot of like concrete paths that people have to follow. They have to do these things to get to a certain point. They have to do this to perform here or there. But, what I noticed, well, while I was talking to my teacher the other day, and we were deciding again college audition pieces just because the time is coming around and it's difficult and scary, but it's almost here. So I was looking at pieces, and she was suggesting, so I guess the more concrete path in this sense would be to play the like Mendelssohn E minor, like something that's like very, very like played and just classical, like the flat out. I say minimum, not in the sense that it's like the minimum difficulty level. Rather, it's just like the contrast between that and some other piece of another era or something like that. I don't know. It's just not as differentiating from the rest of the music that exists in this world. So when we're designing pieces, she was like, why don't you try and experiment? So this is where my support system comes in, where she was like, why don't you try to go to a different path? Why don't you discover pieces from these composers or from women composers in an older time, which is so uncommon and unheard of. But she suggested me pieces, and I was like, see, that's something that I really value. And now that classical music is just like, I feel like when people are thinking about classical music, they think of just like this one type of music, this one era, this one this, which I mean, I guess it was, but also there's so many different subgenres, so many different people, so many different composers, so many different styles that existed in that same time, and those are really important to experiment with and look at. So that's kind of where I think my violin teacher is great in the sense she's not making me nail down exactly. I mean, I have to do some basics, but going and expanding from there and learning more and looking at different things.
It seems like we're at a, it's a good time to be alive, so to speak, particularly on this day, and not to timestamp it, but it's inauguration day, which
Yes.
which you are very closely located to. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Go on, go on.
yeah, you can't get too close though. It's heavily guarded
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. But specific to even audition rep, it looks like speaking out and like raising these obvious, glaringly obvious concerns is finally yielding some results. It's not like people haven't been mentioning this for a long time, but I'd say for the first time, I'm really seeing uh, change. Some acknowledgement of like, wait a minute, all of our audition rep, let alone the concert rep that what we play, is just old dead German white guys. And while maybe some of the audition might need to be that, because if everyone's playing this piece, then it's easier to compare instead of maybe they played a way more difficult piece they weren't quite ready for versus someone nailing a much simpler piece. Like how do you judge that? So some commonality is fine, but even one particular example, her name's Gigi, Jiji. She's a classical guitarist, really well known, graduate of Yale, performs a lot of concertos, big a proponent of new music. And she wrote a very successful article about how every classical guitar audition, like even the school she went to, Yale, it's just all dudes. Like the rep is so standard, it's all dudes. And if you're not encouraging people to practice that or having them audition for that, it's just like that's one of the first steps that's preventing a lot of evolving on this front. So I think it's great that your teacher is bringing this up because Drew and I we think a lot about auditioning for music school because we mentor and work with so many people who are going through that process. But something I do think about is like while there are some staples and these paths to get into this music school, it really comes down to like, what do you want at that music school? And for instance, as a composer, I wouldn't want to write pieces specifically just to get in a school because that's a little deceptive to them and myself. Like, I'm not going there to write music that way. I'm going to write music that way. And whether or not the school has a fancy name or not, or what they can give you, you really want what's best for you. Juilliard is not the best place for everyone. It's not the best place for most most people. It's not the best school for every instrument. It's not the best at this for every particular person. It can be. It can certainly be the best place for some people, but I wanted it to work with my music. I wouldn't present something else that wasn't me and that I didn't want to work on and evolve with. And so I think to some degree with performers, yes, to the staples of the rep for comparison, but coming in and branching out your own composition, an older work that's just less often played, a newer work, a work by your friends or whatever, that shows a little something else. And if they're accepting you on that, then they're accepting you uh, more on your terms. And so it'll just be, I think it's like setting the groundwork for a more like useful collegiate experience coming in and really showing you want to, show the best version of you. You're curating it for them, but you're not presenting something else. It's not a false front. It's just you're just curating the best version of yourself.
And I think, right, like going off of that, if you think about it, these like music schools are really just like a think tank of like all these like different musicians with different styles of playing. And I think, um, I mean, I wouldn't know, but you guys probably would have had like so many interactions with these musicians and different styles. And putting that all together is probably what makes music what it is, enjoyable and fun. And yeah.
Since leaving New York, you're so right. You're so right, and it's like we we go to Juilliard to try to like get pretty good at the instrument, right? And our colleagues and the teachers, and they're all focused on one thing: become a better classical musician, right? And so that was really good. That was really, really good for me because it helped me force myself to get better at my technique. I even would go to the subways and I can play classical music super classically. I can do that. But as soon as I was asked to go to a like let's say a I would meet up with hip hop and R&B producers and I would play for free because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know my value. Even though I was at Juilliard, I was doing sessions for free. And they would ask me to like play something. I was like, "Where's the music?" They're like,
Yeah.
"Just play something." Uh, what do you mean? Well, I can tell you the chords is like A7 to C9 and then it goes to B flat flat seven. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
So I think that like in in pursuing classical music too much, I also was finding that I had so many blind spots in other genres and other ways of expressing myself and also providing value to other people. Because how small of a market is that where they need a string player? That string player needs to be a violist, and they have to have sheet music already written up for them to even have the opportunity to pay you. That is too many barriers to entry. And so when I began discovering that and I moved to LA and I started playing bossa nova gigs, I played Hollywood Bowl with this guy named Marco Antonio Solis. He was a Mexican singer songwriter who rocked the house and had one of the most incredible shows. Never heard of him before, right? And working with hip hop artists, like I was in the studio with my roommate Winton Grant. We went and hung out with JoJo, and like we were told the day before, hey, come through. We don't have the music for you, but here's what the song kind of sounds like, and we're sent like an MP3 from her album, and we had to come up with string parts. We didn't know what other instrumentation was going to be there. We knew it was going to be violin and viola, and thank goodness we had a pianist who pretty much knew most of that stuff, and so we could just play chords on top. But we had to figure that out. No sheet music, no nothing, all from ear, and that is something I would not have been able to do before I moved out here. So I think that is it's also super important to realize that yes, while you're going into school for a classical degree, and you're trying to gain new perspectives by when you're auditioning with different pieces that people aren't really familiar with. I think that that is going to be more of the rule than the exception, because the only way to grow and only way to stand out is to continually build a vaster array of skills and repertoire. So I hats off to you.
And speaking to that, music school and college in general gets poo-pooed on a lot because, oh well, why didn't we talk about this? Why didn't I learn about, doing my taxes while I got my physics degree or whatever? And my rebuttal is, well, that's not necessarily the point. And that school is not going to teach you everything. And if maybe it's a marketing problem to where people think just going to get a college degree, a master's degree, a doctoral degree is somehow giving you supreme knowledge to everything you need to know. Uh, that should never be expected. We can't deliver on that because you'd be in college for 16 years. And so the only real education you're really going to get is just life, is going through it, learning from failures, going out and exploring. So with classical music, it's a particularly hard problem because there's so much to learn. You need 20, 30 years of knowledge. They have to pick and choose what goes into those 4 years, those 6 years, those 8 years. And it's not going to be everything. So, depending on where you go to school, it might be more broad, which maybe makes an easier transition out into the real world, or it might be more specific, say like a Juilliard, where it's really diving in the nitty gritty, get good at classical music. And if you kind of excel and climb the certain ladders on here, maybe it'll branch out. It'll give you a model to learn elsewhere. And that's really what education is about. You're not going to learn everything. It's not about memorizing facts. You will forget it. Um, like in a couple years, your parents will be like, "Hey, clean out these boxes of old notebooks. You don't need these anymore." And you'll scroll through your high school notebooks of all this stuff you thought was important, and you will remember absolutely none of it. But the most important thing you get from education is how to learn. It's a model for learning, particularly for music and sports. Why are they so revered? Why do Nobel Peace Prize winners? Why do Pulitzer Prize winners? Why do people who make so many like major scientific discoveries, um, like all the mathematical prizes? Often they've played music or they're long distance runners or something along those lines. Now, why? Endorphins make you happy. That's good. Maybe music makes you happy, but is it really something magical about sports or music? Not necessarily. It's because those are just two kind of proven methods on how to learn something. and how to improve at something. That's often why athletes have to study music or ballet or something like that. And musicians, a lot of them are actually running marathons or cyclists or doing something along those lines, because it's a set multi-hundred years long method on how to improve and like gain knowledge about something. And so for me, really what music school is, whether or not the moment you graduate and you never touch that instrument again, or and you never even like attend another concert, do anything like those, that was not a wasted time. You've learned a method on how to improve. Take that literally anywhere else, and you will find success. So with music school, it's really just a mindset. If you're expecting it to be everything, uh, you're in a lot of trouble. But if you're realizing that, hey, this is my moment, this is 4 years, a rare opportunity to really focus in and learn how to get good at this thing. When I get out, I can branch off. Or I'm going in, I'm going to hang out with lots of people who aren't in music school and kind of start off broad. I might not be as further down that siloed pipeline, but I can get there eventually too. The journey is different to how narrow or how wide, but the main thing is that you keep moving forward.
I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
exactly. I think what my physics teacher, he again, we were talking about this right before I started recording, but my physics teacher and how he was talking about how it's more important on not necessarily like what to learn, rather how to learn, and that just getting certain subject areas or like getting stuff nailed into your brain isn't necessarily going to help you in the future. Um, it's more learning the process on, again, exactly what Trevor said, the learning the process on how to learn, and like applying that same technique in a different field or in something else, in whatever else you're passionate about, or just again branching off and looking at the different opportunities you have. So that's definitely something that I value, and I definitely think that it's something that like it should be valued. So I can just dive right into the 7 questions speed round because I feel like we're around halfway done. But um, yeah, I'll just get right to it.
Cool. And I'm
So
sorry for the chopper sounds and the police cars if you can hear them. Dude, something's going down
Dramatic effect.
outside, man. Yeah. Yeah, dude, we're dropping that knowledge that's illegal, man. They're coming for us.
yeah, no, yeah, I can just dive right into this. So this is just gonna be 7 really fast questions, so you can give short answers. Um, yeah, they're just totally random. Okay. Um, Answer in any order, whatever you feel like. Whoever wants to answer first. Maybe we could do like a game show. Okay, I don't know. Never mind. I blanked.
Rapid fire. We'll
Yeah,
rapid
rapid
fire.
fire. What I'll say it. It'll be like boom boom. A B. Me, you,
Let's
Trevor.
do it. Let's
Cool.
do it.
Let's get
Okay,
it.
ready? First question. If you could be a member of any TV show or like sitcom family, which would you pick?
I'd be in Harry Potter. I'd be Lee Jordan or insert other black guy. I'm down.
Oh my gosh. I'd want to be in Schitt's Creek because it's topical. It's funny.
I need to watch that. I haven't started watching it, but
I haven't
okay.
seen it either.
Next,
It's nice light humor, and they just seem like a fun crew to hang around.
I'll start watching that show. Sounds good. Second question. What was your favorite holiday or vacation, and where was it to?
My favorite was a month in Japan, uh,
Hmm.
in Narimasu, right outside of Tokyo.
I mean, first off, I really miss just the concept of vacations. Um, but I did a year or two ago, like have a couple of days in Puerto Vallarta, and it was just beautiful to see such happy people. That's really the takeaway. The weather was great, but really, just the people were really happy there. It was nice to leave the states.
I've been there too, man. They got the mangoes. I told you they had the
Oh, the
mangoes.
mangoes, it's so good.
Yeah.
I gotta go as soon as people get
Yeah.
moving. But next question. What is your favorite song right now?
Okay, yes, there is this song called Outside by West Side Boogie featuring Joey Badass. I don't know what it is about it, but it speaks to my soul. It's pretty much a braggadocio rap track where he's just talking about how most people are sitting inside swatting house flies. The house flies are just like those those negative thoughts or opinions of other people. They're not outside doing the work, but Westside Boogie is outside doing the work while you are inside. So definitely check it out.
I love that. So like I'm very bad with like song names and song stuff, which is ironic since it's what I work on. I like don't know the lyrics to any song. It's actually kind of like amazing. Instrumentalist at heart. But not really a song, but one piece I just keep listening to. Brace yourself. It's Max Richter Sleep. And it's an 8-hour piece. And it's 8 hours. It's supposed to, and they perform it from like midnight to 8 a.m. in the morning. And there's just something about an 8-hour piece that's just meant to be meditative and to kind of resemble the process of sleep.
Did Isabel Hagen play on that?
She played that. She performed that live. So shout outs to one of our friends, violist and podcast colleague Isabel Hagen, for performing that many nights for 8 hours.
Wow, that's talent. Performing an 8-hour piece. That is wow.
And people sleep through the whole time. What? Such disrespect.
Hey, they get their full 8 hours, okay?
It was a $150 ticket, so I did not attend my own favorite piece to sleep through. So,
I'll take a listen next time. Maybe right before I go to sleep or something. I don't know. Put it on. But next question is: have you ever met any celebrities, and if so, who?
Yeah. Since moving to LA, I've met a lot of them. Ariana Grande. I saw T-Pain backstage, Jamie Foxx, Corinne Fox, Camila Cabello, Alicia Keys, Roddy Ricch. And that's one of the cool things about being a musician is like you can be super close. You're not supposed to be in that room. You're in rooms where you're not supposed to be. And so it makes me feel like an assassin. You know, I'm like in here, ain't nobody know I'm here. But they will, and it'll be too late.
I guess the two the most frequently ones I bumped into was I lived in the Juilliard dorms, and that's also rehearsal space for like the Lincoln Center theater. And so I have many an elevator ride with Denzel Washington. Wow. His wife actually grew up in my small hometown of Newton, North Carolina, which is about as like granular as it can get, and she grew up there. I've like passed her house before, tiny little house, small area, and so my family was always like, did you tell them him where you're from? I'm like, I did not talk to him. He's got a 6'9" bodyguard. I was like, that was a silent elevator ride. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Next question. I'm reading the song. Okay, what is your most essential appliance? Very random question.
My Chemex.
What is that?
Okay, so I guess it's not an appliance. I guess it would be it would be the stove to heat the water that I use to brew my coffee. A Chemex is like one of those glass bowls that looks like this. And you just like you pour hot water out of a teacup and you let it filter through the filter.
Swanky coffee. It's delicious.
Yeah. Oh man,
it's delicious. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess mine's not really an appliance too. It's one of those like fruit basket banana stands. I eat a lot of bananas. So I eat like 2 bananas a day. It's a problem. And so it keeps the bananas fresh. So that is my most used appliance.
Very, very interesting. The next question is, what was the last book that you read?
Quick question for the question: to completion or literally?
Just any way you want to interpret it.
Okay, the last book that I had in my hands was on my phone. It's by Jim Collins. It's called Good to Great. It's lauded as one of the best business books for entrepreneurs. Apparently it was Kobe Bryant's, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant's favorite book. And I've gotten recommended it by many people in business who are steps above me. And so I'm getting back to it.
And so like the last book I read to completion it's called The Tools. And it's just a bunch of like steps and mental frameworks to kind of get through hurdles as an artist or just in your life in general. And then the last literal thing I read, because I unfortunately I read hundreds of articles, listen to hundreds of podcasts, but I don't read enough books. Drew is much better at that than me. But I did read 2 or 3 pages of one last night. I was gifted it. It was like the holiday gift from the company I work at, Tonebase. And the founder of that company sent me Shoe Dog, which is by the creator of Nike. And apparently it's another one of those like kind of staple business books to kind of walk through the crazy and wild journey of creating a successful company.
You gonna have to mail me that.
I'm
one,
gonna
bro.
send it, and I literally thought when I opened, I was like, if I read this, I'm gonna mail it to Drew once I
And I'll mail you a book, bro.
trade.
That's amazing. You made some very food for thought books. That's definitely not what I'm reading right now. I'm reading a book called Prince of Achilles. Has totally fictional, but kind of mythological in a sense. But I've heard it's really good, so I just decided to order it and see how it is. So that's
Read. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it doesn't have to be nonfiction. A lot of people think they have to like learn stuff, but reading is good for your brain. It's like doing push-ups and squats for your brain, and we don't do it enough. And I think it's really important we do more.
I
yeah.
second that we don't do it enough. A big part of my childhood that I almost never talk about was I was a voracious reader. I read all the time, and it was always fantasy. It was something, the Redwall series a couple times, Harry Potter's, Lord of the Rings, anything. And that's something I definitely had to drop off in middle school and high school as I started to do more music. But even though, of course, I'm not reading tons of books, I'm just always consuming articles, interviews, and knowledge on that front. And I really want to get back to in adulthood, as we'd call this current phase. I really want to actually get back into that the fantasy side of things, the nonfiction, the not reading just to gain said knowledge from said entrepreneur, but to kind of like take a break, explore a different universe, and to unlock other creativity. So
Yeah, I also like got out of the loop of reading as soon as I started high school, and then like I like literally did not read a single thing unless it was for school homework or something. But for like 2 years, like 2 solid years, and then I just got back into it because I had a habit where I couldn't like fall asleep without reading at least like 10 or 15 minutes, like just reading a book or something. And then now I got back into it, and now I like genuinely I got the same habit again. I can't sleep without reading a book or
good habit.
Akanksha, that habit will make you. That's gonna be one of the most important habits. Like if you look at anybody who's super successful, it doesn't matter what field they are, they have a book on their nightstand and they read every night. That is just something that adults that have busy schedules, that's when they find their time to read. Because if you continue to keep learning for the rest of your life, people forget how long life is. If you just do 30 minutes a book a day for the rest of your life, you'll get through thousands of books.
So many.
You're gonna be a beast. But it's just like that tiny little habit over a long period of time. So I hope you never lose that.
I genuinely hope so too. I don't want to get back out of this groove. It's really nice. The last question before we head to the very last topic will be, what's your favorite fast food chain?
Oh, I got it.
Go for it.
Okay, so easily it's Bojangles. So that is southern, and so Drew knows about this, but most people don't. If you ever pass through the Carolinas or other select regions in the South, is it in Georgia?
Yes, it is. We got
Okay.
Bojangles everywhere.
It's very few. It's not throughout the entire South, but basically it's like spicier southern. It's better than Chick-fil-A. It's like a chicken-based thing, and it's greasy, it's salty, it's got to be horrible for you. But I make sure whenever I fly back home, say for the holidays, I get off the plane, no matter what time it is, I'm going to Bojangles. But also my other rule is that's the only time I will eat it. Is that first time it's like I got to do it once, and I'm like I will drink no more sweet tea the rest of this trip. I will eat no more fast food the rest of this trip. But I have to have it once. It's no longer a question. I land, family doesn't ask even if I don't need to eat. We're going to Bojangles.
Wow.
It took me a while. I've been still struggling. I can't narrow it down. So I'm gonna give you two regionals. I'll give you top three. Okay. So regionally, On the southeast coast, there's a place called Zaxby's. It's similar to Raising Cane's. Just amazing. Their sauce is like the craziest thing ever. It used to be Chick-fil-A, but now they've got Chick-fil-A in a lot of places. It's not just Georgia. From Georgia, that's where it started. Chick-fil-A is definitely up there. And then since moving to LA, I have a weekly ritual on my cheat day, whether it's a Friday or a Saturday. I always have to get In and Out once a week because I just love it that much. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I haven't actually, I don't know if I've actually been to it In and Out. We went to California once for like a trip a long time back, but I've heard a lot about it. I've seen a lot of videos of David Dobrik giving out like they're like paying for everyone's meals in the whole entire insane, but that's interesting. Yeah, so that ends the 7 questions speed round, and then the last thing that I wanted to cover was what or like in what ways have you been a mentor to younger musicians, and what advice do you have for aspiring musicians? And this does hit home a little bit just because I also hope to be a musician, a professional musician one day, and would love to hear some advice.
I bet you hit that, Trevor.
All right, I would jump into the deep end. Um, so particularly to the second part, like advice. No, I'll cover the first part. So for both Drew and I, um, and like one thing that amazes me, particularly with Drew, is just like the amount of people who reach out because of all the energy and the constant output. Drew is always sharing things and is an actual inspiration for so many people. And I kind of hide in the shadows. So I pale in comparison to how many people Drew is able to speak to, and he talks to everyone and he interacts with everyone and shares his knowledge. And I'm happy to do that as well. I would not be where I am today doing what I'm doing without mentors and teachers. Just like with friends and collaborators, those are also my mentors. I've learned just as much from people older than me than from people my age and younger. I feel like when I'm teaching younger students, and I spend a lot of time mostly in New York, I've kind of circled back. I now work for an online education company on the business side of things. But even still, I've learned I think far more from interacting with even say all of my middle school age students down to single digits, first graders, second graders, having to explain things, work through things, think about things. Um, that in itself is kind of a mentorship and self mentorship. When I'm not collaborating with people, when I'm not working with people who inspire me or on particular projects, I mentioned that's when I'm not putting out my best work or I'm not as happy about what I'm doing. And I'd also say the thing it took me a long time to realize, and I still haven't fully come to terms with, is that while you're in school, it's set up with kind of a mentorship model, particularly when you get into college and particularly to music school, more so than almost any other degree. When you go to college, it's very rare to have a one-on-one interaction with any faculty or teacher. But in music school, that's part of the process, and I think that's what music kind of has an advantage with. Same with the sports and athletes. The wide receiver coach knows you personally. You work with them one on one. The strength coach can work with you one on one. Like that's something unique that doesn't happen in education. That I think we need more of, and music's just a nice vehicle for that. But when you graduate, it's like, oh, I'm done. Master's degree. I'm a master of music. I figured it out. And then suddenly everything starts to suck. And I stop practicing as much and I kind of put things on the back burner and the quality kind of disappears. And it took me forever to realize that those who were still finding success still had mentors, big time golfers. Tiger Woods still has a swing coach. Roger Federer still has a coach in the stand. They can be the best in the world at what they're doing, and yet there is a coach and a mentor sitting in the audience. Serena Williams, same thing. Someone is in the audience observing them. It helps to have an outside observer. It helps to have someone just to bounce ideas off of, to think about the process. Someone external from you who might have knowledge from other fields or expertise within your field to come in and help you out. I'm not me. I'm not myself even to this day when I don't have some type of mentorship, and actively seeking more mentorship for me. And knowing that I wouldn't be where I am without that, I make it a high priority to be that for other people. For Drew and I, like growing up in the South, not being surrounded by classical music all the time, we understand what it's like to go to a not super fancy college at first. And then we also know what it's like to go to super swanky high level college as well. And then to have fears in the industry, to go months without a paycheck, to put in freebie work, to win big gigs. We've kind of experienced a lot over the past dozen years. And so I know for both of us, and then I'll let Drew answer, we make it a priority to be able to pass that on because not just because others did it for me, but that's how I think how we move forward as a society, how we have better art is by extending the ladder down and handing on that shared knowledge to the next generation.
Hmm, I love that. So what question am I answering again?
Oh, just a general, again, this is
Yeah.
whatever your take on it is totally fine. But in what ways you're like a mentor to younger musicians and any advice that you have for aspiring musicians?
I, I I struggle with this so much because like I accidentally like I did it on purpose, but I never thought it would happen where I would build a platform where in excess of 119,000 people like follow me. What? Okay. So there's a lot of pressure when it comes to that. So I try not to think about it because the more I think about it, the more overwhelmed I become and the less likely I am to actually produce. So I just have to what I've been doing is retreating back into myself and just doing whatever I feel would be very helpful in general. What are problems that I had in my past, and how would I make a video to help young me figure this out? And so I just, or somebody, the before me, before I learned this, how would I teach that? So that's the kind of content I'm really becoming more interested in making. I spent like 4 hours last night researching neckties because I'm trying to do a YouTube tutorial on how to tie a tie, a full Windsor, because one thing that I've noticed is like even at this stage, there are people that I share the stage with that don't know how to tie a tie. They have the clip on. And it's an art that's really important. It also is something you can do for yourself. It's a craft and it's something that I've been doing for 16 years. That's all said and done, but I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give to somebody who's younger and is hungry, like you, Akanksha, I love your name. I want you to know that failure is required. Failure is required. Grunt work, or as they say in the medical field, the scut work, just the grunt, ugly trench, taking out the trash, cleaning your bathroom, making your bed type of work in your career is not only required, but you will not progress unless you have a period of this in your life. Now, Beethoven, he went to Vienna, wanted to study with Mozart. Mozart was like, I don't know. Beethoven gets a letter saying mom died or mom is dying, mom is sick. He gets in a carriage, takes a couple weeks for him to get back home. Mom's been dead for a few days, and now mom's debts are saddled upon the eldest, Beethoven. Um, his dad, still alive, is not in the picture, and is also has his own debts that he is not able to pay. So Beethoven has to take on the burdens of the eldest son, the burdens of the sole breadwinner for his siblings, and the person who must pay back the debts of his predecessors. Whoa. Okay. So you know what he did? He had to. I forget exactly how many years because I learned this in a middle period Beethoven class, so I the details are still fuzzy. But he played for many years in the Bonn Opera as a violist to
Shout
pay
out.
his bills. But it was years. This is Beethoven we're talking about, okay? Like this is the goat. This is the dude who said, "You know what? classical music's too boring. I'ma mix this ish up. I'ma double the length of the symphony. I'ma get kind of weird with chromatic modulation in the way we move from key to key. I'ma be an innovator, right? And people didn't like it during his time. But in order for him to get there, he had to play in the viola section for years just to pay his bills. Can you imagine how demeaning that is? He was so close to studying with Mozart, the goat, even of that time. Everybody knew Mozart was the ish, right? So Beethoven, after many years, pays off his debts, makes sure his family is taken care of, gets back on another carriage on the way to Vienna. He gets back to Vienna to finally study with Mozart. Mozart's gone. Mozart's been gone for years. Missed opportunity. And then the reason why I tell this story is because like we look at the greats, the people we still talk about all for centuries, right? For decades, right? They all have these moments where their life sucked, where they had to really kind of dig deep and do work they didn't really want to do, and they had to get the training. They had to do the grunt work. And I think what's really important right now is you've got to zoom out on your life and kind of bet that you're going to be around for a little while. And if you're in a rut, you will encounter a rut. You will encounter many of them. And you will be forced to do work that does not inspire you. You'll be forced to do repetitive work that makes you feel like you're not living your fullest potential. And you have to push through it with patience. And you have to find a way to continue to even grow under those circumstances, because eventually you'll be able to look back and realize that was my boot camp. Everybody has to do it, and nobody's exempt. So patience over a long period of time is the only way to even get somewhere in this business. And if you can do that, Akanksha, and the listeners of this podcast, you will be so surprised by how your life will turn out.
I'm genuinely in awe of the way that you guys look at music and the way that you look at learning music, teaching music, and educating others about what things that you should value when learning music. It's just a whole like that's amazing. I like there's a lot of things that I didn't think about that way either, like until just now when he said it, of how like there's going to be like low lows before you get to your highs, and how like not too long ago I was in myself in a sort of I wouldn't call it a low, but I'd say like my passion kind of was like dwindling off. Like it wasn't genuine. Like I didn't think, like I was like, there's no way I can do this for another like 4 5 years. And then I started to think about the other like paths that I could take, but then that's when I realized that that's not really what I want to do either. Like I don't think I could do anything that didn't involve playing the violin. I don't think I could do a whole entire different career path. But, finding the in betweens where like it's okay to take like a break. It's okay to just experience different paths before you really just finalize on something or just finalize on a career, which again, you don't have to do. So that's again another thing that I learned.
I
So
want to amplify exactly what you just said because that's going to continue for you and all of your listeners' lives. And that, um, I mean, being a musician and just an artist in general, or just a human, a citizen in general, uh, it's two separate things, and you can be one, both, or none of them. Being a musician is both a lifestyle and a career. And sometimes those are going to be in conflict. Some people will have both. Some people will have one, and plenty of people will have none, and that is just okay. Like what you said, um, the thing they don't tell you in music school or when you're growing up is that not only is it okay, at least to me, but it's encouraged to try different things, to explore, to put things on the back burner. Um, that's not really mentioned in music school because they're there to do that very specific thing. That's not really mentioned in high school that, you know what? You don't have to go to college quite yet. You don't have to do this. You can go get a degree in something and then go do something entirely different. And in fact, you'd be the norm. The last time I
Yep.
checked, a couple years ago, I remember I'd go in and give talks, and actually both Drew and I would do this as far as our work with and recipients of like career grants. So they bring us in to talk to students, and they expect we're going to tell them about, okay, go out and do this networking thing and make sure to practice a lot. But no, at least I'd go in there and be like, hey, get out of the practice room and like look to your left, look to your right. Those are your friends. One of them might get you a gig later. Go to the party. I wish I had gone to the party. But with these choices, like the one thing they don't tell you that I would encourage everyone to do is that give yourself permission to change your mind. Give yourself permission to try other things. It's okay. It's okay to do music every day. It's okay to do something else all the time. Because as long as you're working on you, you can take that with you for the rest of your life.
And sorry, I think we're gonna have to wrap it up just because my camera's about to die. I don't want the recording to cut out, and I thought I charged my camera, but I guess not. So again, that's so insane that you guys are so passionate about playing music, teaching other people what it means to be in a career that is music oriented, and what different paths people can take, all the different stuff. And after just one single conversation, you guys are inspirations already just after this one podcast. And I think it's amazing. Again, I don't have a lot of variation of words to describe this conversation just because I'm in awe. It's crazy. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And yeah, so with that said, I just want to thank you guys again for like the 15th time on this episode. And I really had a blast talking about music just because that's something that's so personally, like I relate to that a lot. So it's glad to hear from people that think the same way, have the same mindset, and a lot more experience. So that's great to hear.
Thank you so much for having us for
Thank you.
real. And like if you or your audience want to hear more of like what we're getting up to, we have our own podcast, Faking Notes Podcast. We love to have people like you, Akanksha. So like in a couple years, like when you're done with school, when you're in the middle of school, we should probably bring you on and maybe have another conversation about maybe how your thought processes have changed and shifted after having gone into school and gone through this process. So I hope that this is just the very beginning of our collaboration and our professional relationship.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just to the listeners really quickly, be sure to follow and subscribe to Podaria on YouTube, but also any of your other preferred platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere. You just search it up on the internet, you'll find us. But and make sure to never miss an episode, hit the follow button and stuff like that. Keep listening and keep being inspired.